Hello, kiddies. It's your old pal, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And you're listening to The Bottom Shelf.
All right, everybody. I hope you're ready. We have the next movie that we have to watch to continue with the video game theme. We're going with Street Fighter.
Oh.
Quick! Change the channel!
Prepare yourself to discover a world of terrible movies. High above the planet Geekery, a group of intrepid explorers hover over the dangerous planet in their fabulous super-orbital spacecraft. Their mission? To conduct a complete analysis of movies known throughout the universe as terrible. So grab your space popcorn, grab your freeze-dried ice cream, and join us for today's mission of discovery and wonder. Are these movies better than the galaxy thinks? Or do they really belong on the bottom shelf?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Bottom Shelf, the show from the Geek Devotions Network that watches terrible movies so you don't have to. I will be your host this evening. My name is Smooth Operator number 29957.
No, this is John, and I'm your host. Again, this is The Bottom Shelf, the movie division of the Geek Devotions podcast network, the network dedicated to letting you know that you are loved. So if you don't listen to anything beyond this point, just know you are loved, you are cared for, there's a purpose for your life. Doggone it, Jesus likes you. With us again, returning guest, we have Jonathan Gilbert from the Geek Devotions crew on the Face Space and other places.
I'll say this. Jonathan has been a devoted geek since the beginning of our podcast of Calm Talk.
Ever since there was a part that was called the Geek of the Week.
I honestly forgot that he was I really thought he was like part of the show somewhere. Like I mean, maybe you should be.
Never been part of the show, just known Dallas for like 6 years now.
Yep.
Well, now that you have a microphone.
Branson's trying to push this thing like a drug dealer. He's like, hey, podcast.
I got started. That's how I got started.
And those other voices you heard, we have Branson the Boykin.
Ooh.
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
And Dallas the Mora.
Hello.
And together we combine to create the giant Megazord. And no, we're just a bunch of idiots that are getting together to watch a terrible movie.
By your powers combined.
He-Man.
Stop.
I can't help it. When we recorded the other episode, I drank a C4, and now my brain's just going a mile a minute. But this week we will be watching Street Fighter, that glorious movie starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, and it's from 1994. It is rated PG-13 for non-stop martial arts, action, and violence. So that's a thing. But it looks like we got some taglines here.
Yeah.
We do. Let's see. First tagline. I may be bad, but I feel good. Okay.
All right. I want to read this one. Sweat, muscles, and the amazing 90s action you could wish for. All the amazing 90s action you could wish for. Jonathan, you take the next one, bud.
The fact that they use video game sound effects is the cherry on top.
This one says, one of my favorite bad movies. Oh, all right.
I mentioned this earlier in the show, but quick, change the channel.
No one is actually from where they portray.
Facts.
Yep.
Jonathan, take the last one, brother.
I don't have the last one here, Dallas.
What?
I'm not seeing it.
It says, watch the movie based on the game so you can play the game based on the movie based on the game.
That's actually a thing, but I'll get into
Yeah.
that.
I remember renting that game from Video Villager back in my little town I grew up in Illinois.
Wow.
So does that mean the movie was different enough from the game that you could base a game on the movie and it be a separate game?
It was almost like a reskin.
Oh,
You take the original, you put the look of the actors from the movie on it, the backgrounds, and call it a new game.
Well, actually, let me dive into that because there is information I have on that. And that's a great segue into the trivia section. This movie, like I said, was released in 1994 with a budget of $35 million. By the time it closed worldwide, it had grossed $99,431,786. So this, unlike Super Mario Brothers, did make its money back. As mentioned, there was a video game that was based off of this movie called Street Fighter the Movie, the video game. Initially, it was supposed to be slated as Street Fighter 3, still being based off of the movie, but they were going to take the arc of the movie and transfer it into a numbered sequel for the video game series. During this time in the video game market, Mortal Kombat was raking in the dollar bill, y'all.
Heck yeah.
And Capcom wanted to get in on some of that sweet mocap action. So they felt like doing a digitization of all the actors doing their fancy dancy moves would rake in some of that MK money. Lots of things went wrong, and so not only did we get a terrible movie, but we got a terrible video game on top of it.
I'm looking at the graphics for it, and it looks like a high res version of Mortal Kombat 2.
That's basically what they were shooting for. During Jean-Claude Van Damme also revealed that later that during filming of this movie, he had a drug problem and he was doing about $10,000 worth of cocaine a week.
Oh my gosh.
And also during this movie, he had an affair with Kylie Minogue. Director Stephen E. D'Souza confirmed in 2018 that Van Damme's cocaine addiction caused constant disruptions during the filming. The studio had hired a wrangler to keep an eye on him, but as his person was a bad influence himself, the action star would often call in sick, leave the set, show up late, or not at all, forcing D'Souza to find other scenes to film in order to make up for lost time.
hey.
Also, and shout out to the director, Stephen E. D'Souza, not necessarily for his work on this movie, but as a decent individual, he deferred his salary to pay his cast.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I respect that. I respect that move.
For playing the role of M. Bison, Raul Julia researched various dictators and crime lords and their lives and personalities and mimicked many of their traits to incorporate into the M. Bison character. Specifically, Benito Mussolini's hand gestures, Joseph Stalin's mannerisms, and Pablo Escobar and his elusiveness, and Hitler's love of art. Julia also approached the role with a Shakespearean tone, looking at Bison as the same type of villain as Richard III.
Nice.
So he
Very
sounds
cool.
like he actually put a lot of effort into that.
Oh yeah, he did. One of the I'm gonna add a little trivia to it. One of the things about this movie for Julia was this was supposed to be a gift to his kids. He was talking to him. He told him about this movie, got offered, and it was Street Fighter, and his kids freaked out. And his kids were pretty young. They're probably about your boys' age, actually, Branson.
Oh, really?
And they love Street Fighter. So the only reason why he took it was because he wanted to make it for his boys.
You know, I've heard of a lot of celebrities that get parts in like comic book movies or video game movies or sci-fi movies it's like I wasn't interested, but then my kids said, "No, Daddy, please," or "No, Mama, please," and it's like, "Okay, sure, why not?" So that's cool.
And a final note, being as we're talking about Raul Julia, just that this is just a little bit of factoids about the top billed cast of this movie. According to the cast and crew, Jean-Claude Van Damme was not easy to work with due to a combination of professional ego and substance abuse. Being the biggest star of the film, Van Damme got a presidential hotel suite with a gym put into his room, and he would often refuse to come out of the hotel or his trailer until he felt ready. When he did come out, he would often bring alcohol to the set or take hours to shoot his scenes. By contrast, everyone loved Kylie Minogue, who played Cammy, praising her for her professionalism and generosity, such as hiring a club and buying drinks for the entire cast and crew to make the tough shoot a little bit easier. And there was also equal praise for Raul Julia, who was accompanied by his family due to being terminally ill with stomach cancer.
Mm,
And despite declining health and frail state, everyone thought that Julia was always focused and a joy to work with.
Dang, that,
that's
that
fair.
that's a pretty bad indictment when a guy with stomach cancer is doing the movie better than the star.
Well,
That's
this is going to get into we're getting to some conversation, but I've heard that about Jean-Claude a lot, that he was a terrible person to work with. So let me read the back of the box real quick, and then we can get into some stuff here. It says this: international action superstar Jean-Claude Van Damme teams up with Raul Julia for a thrill-packed adventure on an epic scale from the screenwriter of Die Hard, 48 Hours, and Commando, and he wrote Judge Dredd, by the way. Based on the best-selling video game, the film hurdles beyond imagination with explosive action, humor, and amazing special effects that don't hold up. Van Damme is Colonel Guile, is Allied Nations Commando, who leads an elite team of street fighters against the forces of General M. Bison, Julia. Bison, who has hatched an evil plan for world domination, and a fun part, takes dozens of relief workers hostage and gives the world only 72 hours to respond to this twisted demands. Yeah, that's about how long it took me to watch the movie. In that time, Guile must find the captives and confront Bison in an electrifying battle for the fate of the free world. Featuring sizzling songs by Ice Cube and Hammer, Street Fighter is an exciting, no-holds-bar action film
Please, Hammer,
for the
don't hurt
whole
him.
family.
do what?
I said, please, Hammer, don't hurt him.
So the back of the box also has this quote from Joseph B. Maurice. And he says, Street Fighter has the perfect combination of elements to put the magic back into Saturday matinees. Well, let's see if there's any magic in this for us guys. Any expectations about this magical film we're about to watch?
Any expectations I have are probably tainted because this is one of those movies when I was working third shift, staying up the night before I had to go back to work, I'd find on one of the higher number channels and watch an hour, 45 minutes of. So in the past 10 years, I've probably seen this movie 12 times in bits and pieces.
Wow.
I actually have never seen it at all. I've never even played
Really?
video games. I am completely blind. I have heard through the grapevine that this isn't a great movie. Well, I mean, obviously if it's on this show, it's not a great movie, but I've never seen it. I've never watched it. Uh I maybe played the video game once when I was visiting my grandmother and my older cousin had his game system hooked up to her TV. I might have played it then, but I actually know next to nothing about the Street Fighter franchise. So this is all new to me.
Cool.
I also have not seen this movie before.
Really?
I
Wow.
caught a chunk of it back in the day when it was on VHS. I caught like maybe about 15 minutes of it. But outside of that, no, I haven't seen this movie. There was a release of the first wave of video game movies that came out, which
Mhm.
was 3 movies that came out all around this time period. There was Super Mario Brothers, see the last episode. Uh this movie, and then Double Dragon,
Yeah.
featuring Bimmy and Jammy. Um,
See next season of The Bottom Shelf, by the way.
There's like 3 people out there who are laughing at the Bimmy and Jammy or the Bimmy and Jammy joke, which is a localization thing. But so I mean, and all 3 of them ended up being awful because the people who were involved with the creation of the movies either had no respect for or didn't understand the source material. So my expectations going into this with that understanding are set pretty low.
Yeah. Well, for me, I watched this movie when it first came out on VHS years ago. I've probably seen it a handful of times if it was on TV. Um, it is one of those ones I bought just to say, "Hey, this is a terrible film." Um, and also just I don't know, there's something about it. Like as a person who likes terrible movies, but also like it holds it was such a topic of conversation as a kid, but I am not expecting to really enjoy this going into it. From my memories of it as a kid, I remember sitting in the lunchroom dogging it. Like my friends and I talking about how bad some of the effects were and like the special moves that they did. So
Were they not
like
special
we
status?
mocked it openly in the lunchroom. So that's where I'm coming from going into this film. So
So your expectations are low, is what you're saying.
yeah, they're pretty low.
All right. Well, unless anybody's got any other expectations to discuss, I think it's time to go in the torture chamber.
Let's go.
Here you go.
Dear listeners, this is your opportunity to escape. Our crew has just entered into the media projection chamber. What horrors and madness that they consume are unknown. Their mental state upon their return is unknown. You have been warned.
Hey, wake up, Branson. Branson, move us over.
What?
Branson,
Huh?
move us over.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, darn. I missed it. I'm so heartbroken.
I mean, we can always take you back in there to watch it again.
No. We that time. Let's
We have this machine, Branson, where we could put a little, like, we could just be right there, goggles for you. We'll pump you full of drugs to keep
No.
you awake for it.
No.
No, actually, all the drugs that are used to keep people awake, Van Damme took them, apparently.
Awkward jokes from John. All
Oh,
right.
man.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have exited the viewing chambers, and none of us have our hair turned to orange. Although Branson does look a little green. So, this is our spoiler-free conversation time. So let's jump into it.
You can definitely tell that Van Damme was going through massive amounts of blow while he was filming this.
I don't think he was present. Like I'm watching it now, especially with how what you say and what you said. Like you can tell, like if you watch him act, he is just not present at all. And I don't know. At first, I thought it was because nobody was like really there for this film. Like because one of the things I heard about this film was that they had less than a year to put it together. Like Capcom was like, no, it has to happen, which is why they got D'Souza because he was the only person who would take on the job who's never this was his first directing job.
Oh, wow.
And so I figured like that was why, but no, he was definitely mentally checked out the entire time.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the biggest things like that I had written down in my notes here. It's just like, where in the world was the $35 million budget used on this movie? And after doing my research on, the trivia for this movie, it's like, oh, the half of it probably went up of Van Damme's nose because
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
that
Now-
guy.
Yeah. That was rough. But I will say this for a 90s movie, while the sets look cheap, they kind of fit the video game vibe, to be honest. Like
You know, I
there are a
got
couple times where say what?
I got that. Yeah. It felt like
Yeah.
a video game.
There's a couple times where like you could tell they were trying quotation marks to emulate some scenes from the video game. Plural games, plural.
I felt like overall I walked in, like I said, I never played the video games. So I have zero basis to start with, but I definitely got the 90s action flick vibe, and it felt like a fun popcorn movie. It was,
Hmm.
I wasn't taking it too seriously, and I was like, okay, this isn't the best film ever, but there's a lot to enjoy about this. You know, I looked forward to scenes where Jean-Claude Van Damme wasn't in there because I felt like he was the worst actor of them all.
Mm,
But everything was going good until a certain point, and I'll save this for the spoiler section, but there's a point where the movie for me took a turn, and at that point,
hmm.
it's like, okay, I can't enjoy this anymore.
Right.
But up until that point, there was a lot that I enjoyed about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you guys remember back in the 90s when WCW was on TNT after it ended? They had those like B action movies that were just fun to watch because they were just so corny. That's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
that's the vibe I got off of a lot of this is this
Yes.
is one of those
Yes.
B action movies that you enjoy because it's just so far out there.
Well,
Yes.
I'll
Exactly.
say this: like throughout it was so self-aware, and they were making so like they made jokes on purpose. This you could tell like they weren't they were doing the film seriously, but they were seriously making a joke out of it. I really feel like this falls into the realm of camp. Like this is like Adam West camp style for most of the film. Like I
Yeah.
don't think they're wanting to make a serious film.
That's good. I don't know. Okay, so like I don't think Jean-Claude Van Damme can deliver a believable line to save his life.
No.
No.
I mean, he's got all the acting talent of a middle school drama team. I mean, his his line delivery is just so unique, and is entirely believable. And look at me do the splits. I mean, to be perfectly honest, and I hate saying this, the lead actor in Fatal Deviation was better at line delivery than Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I was about to say,
Jean-Claude
dude,
Van
like,
Damme fan was better than the actual man himself. That's awesome.
yeah.
I've never been
Jonathan,
able to
have you
finish
seen
that.
Fatal Deviation?
I've never been able to finish it. I started it after you did the episode about it, and I've fallen asleep every time I tried to watch it.
It's so bad, but it's so bad.
It was a pretty rough movie.
Um,
So
I will say though, it is exciting to see that the costume department from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is able to get work outside of network television.
Thank you. I thought that. Like when I saw Bison's headquarters and all of his henchmen marching around, it's like this looks like a Power Rangers movie.
right? It's the one we deserved. I will say,
the look on your
out of-
face, Dallas, when I said that was priceless. I mean, I could eat that for breakfast every single day.
oh my gosh, I would say that costume wise, I was annoyed with the costumes throughout most of the film
Mm-hmm.
because they were just not right. Like the only person whose costume was mostly right was Bison.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it. Everyone like why was Chun-Li in the the Player 2 clone costume?
Thank
Like
you. Thank you. That is one of my biggest gripes about this movie is that Chun-Li outfit. It's like, what idiot made this decision? Here you've established this strong, powerful fighter, and now all at once we're going to go this way with her.
like nothing about it was right costuming wise.
Welcome to the 90s.
I have thoughts about her outfit, but that kind of gets spoilery, so I'll save that.
Right.
For the spoiler
I give you that.
Um,
So
I also
but
think.
like
Go ahead.
huh? Well, just like throughout the entire thing, like they had these weird moments where they're trying to cram in lore and thoughts of the Street Fighter world, and it's just this awkward like just let me just shove it in here, let me shove it in this pocket here, and it was just like there was no thought to some of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and that kind of taps on what I was about to say, which was that this movie has the same problem as Mortal Kombat Annihilation,
Mm,
in that there's too many characters and not enough character development.
yeah,
I mean,
Yes.
that was one of the biggest crimes with Annihilation was that they decided to have 37 characters. Like they literally, like in Annihilation, they literally went into the character select screen and like, we're gonna do all of these, just
yeah,
all of them. And I feel like they tried to do that in this movie, and it's just like you can't do that with a movie. You got to be able to self edit, because if you can't develop
yeah.
these characters, then
It would have been better if they based this off of Street Fighter 2 rather than Street Fighter 2 Turbo plus X,
Mhm.
which had like 60,000 yellow characters to it.
Also, another thought that I had, and I don't know how many people are going to be able to connect with this, but have you guys seen the movie Last of the Mohicans?
Yes.
It was incredibly weird for me to see Magua from Last of the Mohicans play Sagat, which is a Thai crime boss.
Okay,
Yeah.
that confused me because I haven't seen Last of the Mohicans, but I have seen that character play Native Americans and other things.
It's because he
Mhm.
is Native American.
I missed that he was supposed to be Asian.
Yeah.
Until like it was like halfway through the movie, I finally realized that he was supposed to be Asian. I was like, he does not.
That was like what they said in our portion of the beginning of the show. Nobody portrays a character from where they're from.
And it's frustrating to me because really all that says about the casting, and I know this is more of a 2000s, 2010s, 2020s issue, but it's just like it's it's almost offensive to me, and I'm as white as it gets, but I mean it's just like the whole mentality behind it was any brown man will do, and
Yeah.
that
Well, I mean, if you've got my attitude is always if you've got an actor who's a phenomenal actor,
mhm.
but doesn't match the race of the character, cast him anyway and just don't make the race a big issue. I mean, if they wanted, I'm sorry, what was his name? The guy that played Sagat.
I don't know his actual name, but I
Okay.
just know him as the guy who played Magua from the
Yeah. Well, if you
Last of the
want him to
Mohicans.
play Sagat, let him play Sagat, but don't make it a point to say he's supposed to be Asian. Just
Well,
let him be who he is.
the problem is that character in the video game is Thai. Like
Yeah.
both him
Okay.
and M Bison are first supposed to be from Thailand.
Oh, okay.
Like that's a in thing. And that was the thing is everyone's character base was reflective of the style of fighting that they had also. So
I see.
Sagat was it supposed to be a TIE fighter? Not TIE fighter Branson, like from Star Wars, but like a fighter he fights in TIE. And there's a very distinct, like even his fighting style in the movie from again, I'm not some martial arts expert, but from what I've seen, there is nothing TIE about the way that he fought in the game itself or in the movie itself. And again, it's not a perfect 1-to-1, obviously, with what they were doing. But that was one of the things that annoyed me is nobody's fighting styles really looked right, even felt right for the game. Like there were several times where there were fight scenes that were doing the special fighting moves that you have from the game, and they were flatline. The Hadouken.
Dallas.
Yeah.
We're not in the spoiler section.
Oh my gosh.
Do we need to go ahead and go to the spoiler section?
Might be a
Let's
good
do that
idea.
so Dallas can finish this rant.
Ladies and gentlemen, the spoiler section.
Okay, picking up from Hadouken.
The Hadouken was trash. It was absolute trash. He's in the middle of a fight. He's doing infighting, and all of a sudden he does this like weird like Kamehameha like motion, and he taps the chest of the guy, and they animate a little flash of light that makes no sense. There's nothing in the game in the movie that says anything about what a Hadouken was. There's no training for it, which the Hadouken is a major aspect for Ryu, and it's just like here we go. And then like Ken does a little like uppercut, and basically he just like taps the chin and he does a little puree. La 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 ballet. I mean, like, okay, thank you, Nutcracker. I appreciate that. Nutcracker would have been much more effective than what you did right there. Nothing about the thing. The fighting was trash. I know they had like one day to film everything and to make it all happen, but I'm like, geez Louise, Branson, we had better choreographing fencing scenes. You remember for context, Branson and I were fencers back in high school. You remember Sam's like old man pimp slap with the saber?
Yes.
Where he'd walk up. That was better choreographed than anything that was in this dadgum movie. Rant over. Good night, everybody.
Well, now we know how Dallas feels.
That Dallas legitimately sounded offended in that rant.
I think he was.
Look, I like martial arts films. I enjoy good choreography and everything like that. And this is again, I don't have a special attachment to this franchise, but this is a franchise that is well loved, and I feel like it deserved a lot more respect than what it got when they did this. And And there was a lot of great talent in this movie that was wasted.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Raul Julia.
Gosh.
Can we say that guy was wasted on this movie? Because despite the fact that he was working with a
No. But Dam was voiced on the movie.
No, what I'm saying is what I'm saying is that despite the fact that Raul Julia was given a terrible script.
I was making a joke.
Oh, I got you. Oh, he was wasted in this movie, not on this movie. But despite the fact that Raul Julia was given a terrible script, he still shone. I mean, he put a shine on that turd that, that was just
Bison was easily my favorite character of this whole movie, and I normally don't root for the villains.
It makes me sad that this was his last movie.
Yeah.
Talk about Raul Julia and his acting in this movie. It was incredible. I noticed this for the first time. There were scenes where you would see him at first. He would look good, healthy, performing real well. It would cut away to Sagat or whoever for a second and cut back like it's supposed to be a 2-minute shot. And he would look just haggard, like the cancer was destroying him at that moment. And yet he was still giving a stellar performance. He really put his heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
That makes me so much more critical of everyone's performance, because especially hearing the kind of research he put into it. It's like, okay, Bison's supposed to be a dictator. Let me research all of these dictators. Let me take mannerisms from them. Let me look at Shakespearean characters and try to emulate their character styles. I mean, he poured so much into that. And
well, I mean, even if you can contrast it with the other actors, I mean, I made a joke earlier about the wardrobe in this movie. I'm going to say that the acting direction in this movie was also borrowed from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, because there is a lot of that Power Ranger over the top acting in this movie. I mean, Julia excluded. We can talk about the fact that Kylie Minogue was a decent person and tried to be professional on cast, but quite frankly, she was terrible in this movie.
Let me ask you this. Do you think she was terrible because again, I truly feel that a large portion of it was a matter of, we're going to camp this up. They're purposely having fun and being stupid. Case in point, quick, change the channel. That line that I think every one of us probably died at watching.
Yes.
That annoyed me, actually.
That made me laugh. I think that was on purpose.
I had to pause the movie because I was laughing so hard.
Honestly, like seriously, the writing, I blame the writer of this movie. I blame the writer, and despite the fact it was his first movie, I still blame the director, because the writing in this movie felt like it was by the same people who wrote episodes of The Secret Life, the Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. It felt like a Disney Channel TV show to me. Literally, this movie made Best of the Best 2 feel Shakespearean.
I never saw Best of the Best 2, so I don't have the reference.
It's not great.
Okay,
it's not great.
There were whole scenes thrown into the movie that just made no sense. Like when Bison was there and he's got that, what they call it, Bisontopia or whatever the name of that town was. He's like, oh, and we got to make sure we have a food court. Why is the dictator suddenly wanting to build a Bisontopia that has a food court? Or then you have the part of the two things in the movie that drove me nuts. Number one, why did they decide to put Cammy in pigtails? I know in the game she was in pigtails, but have you ever been in a fight? The easiest way to win a fight is control your enemy's head. Grab them pigtails, you've won. And then Chun-Li. Why throw her in her traditional game costume at that point? It felt unorganic, unoriginal, and just some 80s evil movie trope. Instead of trying to do something better, like she used that to infiltrate Shadaloo and be more organic with the story.
That's what I wanted to mention earlier about Chun-Li's outfit. Is throughout the whole movie, her outfits make sense. When she's doing the news reporter, she's in a news reporter gear. When she's doing her secret ninja stuff, she's in a black cat suit. When she's undercover trying to blow up the weapons depot, she's in her circus outfit. The time that where they bring in and like I said, I don't have a lot of familiarity with Street Fighter, but I do know what some of the characters look like. So I had a familiarity with what Chun-Li should look like from the game. And when
Mhm.
they bring her outfit in, it is to dress her up like a concubine for the dictator. And I'm like, that doesn't show that you think a lot about the character if when you reveal her in-game costume, she's dressed up to please the fancies of the villain.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
like you said, she could have dressed that way to get into the base, or something like that instead of her being forced to wear that outfit. And that was that was kind of at the point where I was like, this I don't think I like this as much as I used to.
Even if there was a small like vocabulary of like why she wears the outfit and going into on purpose, like what they did with T-Hawk, whenever it was like they shoehorned it in. It's like, why are you wearing the headband? Oh, it's Cherokee. I do it to for good luck because of my people. Okay, you shoehorn that in real quickly, but you explained it and it makes sense now.
Yeah.
But like hers, it purely was it was almost victimization of her as a character.
Yes.
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 Or why was Balrog wearing boxing gloves at the end?
Where did they come from? Like all of a sudden he had boxing gloves. Like I get it, like he's like the Mike Tyson style character from the game, but like it doesn't even show like I could get like he runs into the into a room where they were sparring, but like why wear the boxing gloves at this point, dude? Uh
Especially like if you're fighting people for freedom, why are you putting boxing gloves on to
Right. That's
protect?
not the
right,
time to put on boxing gloves.
right.
That's the time to take them off.
Right. One of my other issues is the fact that Jean-Claude Van Damme's character is the main character. Like they made Guile the main character of the movie. Even though like from everything I've seen from the comics to the animes, Guile is while he's a while he is a main character, he's not the. Normally it's Ryu who is the main character or maybe Ken in a combination of the two, but not Guile. And it was like is it like who wrote the script
Honestly,
and went let's make
this movie felt more like a pilot for a TV show than it did a movie.
okay.
Yeah.
I would have loved to watch a movie about Ken and Ryu.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would have loved to watch a movie about those two. Not
Totally.
a movie, but a TV show rather.
Yeah.
I would have loved to watch a TV show about E Honda. That guy was interesting. Why was
Mhm.
he able to get caned so many times and just, chew his fingernails?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just like there were
He is sumo training.
there were so more there were so many more interesting characters they could have gone with than Guile.
Mhm. Well,
Right.
I think part of why they went with Guile as the lead was because of the current political climate in the world at the time. Like you're talking about on Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, the Reds, the Russians.
Mhm.
That's around the time we had the switch of leadership from, I think his name was Kim Il Sung to Kim Jong Il. That was around the time of
Mhm.
everything happening in the Middle East with the first Gulf War. So they were going for a kind of pro-American superhero military style leader to make this movie more impactful to people, and it ended up making it kind of fall flat on his face for the fans.
Mm.
That makes sense because I definitely got I remember thinking, especially in the early part of the movie, feeling like this feels like a slightly more mature G.I. Joe
Mhm.
Cobra. It,
Mhm.
it had that vibe of Yo Joe, and especially with the Power Ranger outfits that the henchmen had. I was like, those look like Cobra Commander's goons.
Yep.
It felt to me, and I'm not certain if any of you guys are going to be able to relate to this because I don't know what kind of movies y'all watch, but it literally felt like a live action, and it felt less like a live action Street Fighter and more of a live action Team America.
I can see that. I've seen Team America a couple times, and I can definitely see that.
I mean, like literally, I want you guys like how many of you guys have seen Team America?
I have.
I've seen portions of it.
I've seen advertisements for it.
Okay. Think of the most action-packed part of Street Fighter in your head right now. This is a little thought experiment. One of the most action-packed, like the scene at the end. and then replace the soundtrack with the theme song to Team America and tell me if it feels out of place.
Are you talking about the one that says
I'll give you that.
America and then has a phrase?
It's America.
Yep. Yeah, that one.
Coming to save the
Day. Yep.
day.
Oh, I can see
The
it.
day.
I can picture that. I was actually thinking,
Saving the world the American way.
as I was watching that final fight, John, I was thinking to myself, couldn't they have chosen a more energetic, more fight-worthy song? I mean, at the time, you already had a lot of the hard rock, heavy metal bands that have been used in action scenes had already released their songs, and then they're playing this like generic computer-generated soundtrack to it. But something
Right.
like the America or something from Guns N' Roses even would have been so much better.
I mean, they could have put the
That-
intro track from Hulk Hogan in WWF. You know what? I am a real American. Fight for the right of every man. You know, I don't
Speaking
know.
of the final fight scene, I have a question.
What's up?
Yeah.
Why did they choose the super stealth boat to be the distraction for the invasion? They had the super stealth system that is going to go and be the distraction. So they turn on the stealth, sneak past enemy lines, and then instead of sneaking by the radar towers, they blow them up. That I was trying to understand, why is the super stealth boat a distraction?
Because you got to get close enough to the radars to take out the radar so they don't see the invading force.
But then they know the invading force is coming because they blew up the radar.
Yeah,
But from the opposite direction.
It's a catch-22, and
Then why blow up the radar?
it's the old, like I was
It's right.
saying earlier, it's the 90s B-action movie logic. You have to do something crazy and off the wall to make something logical actually happen. And that's what they did right
It's the
there.
same. It's the same. It's the same problem that I was talking about in Super Mario Brothers. Man, it's just
Yeah.
we're here because we're here because we're here.
Because we're here. Yep. I want to say something positive about the film.
Oh, good
And that
luck.
is, I appreciated the fact, I love the fact that Bison's control panel was the arcade panel.
Yes.
Really? You liked that?
Yeah. If you look at that, that's the arcade fighting control stick and buttons. That was his control panel.
For
That
as much
annoyed me.
for as much as this whole movie was hokey and campy, that was the final straw for me. That was what took me out and just made me just like, no.
Same here, John. Same for me. I was finding a lot of reasons to enjoy it. I didn't like the Chun-Li outfit situation. The stealth boat that was the distraction was like, oh, okay. Let me just hurry up and get to the final fight. But when he goes into his little ball thing and I see arcade buttons, I'm like, okay. I think I fell asleep shortly after that, actually.
Bro.
Now, Branson, you said, what was the point that you checked out on the movie? You said there was a point where it turned on you.
That was
That
the
was
moment
it?
when he had the video game buttons as the interface for his cannon or whatever it was. I don't even know what he was shooting, but I fell asleep shortly after that moment.
Plot bullets. He was shooting plot bullets.
Oh, okay.
They plot bullets, they hit things and they make plot holes. And, bro, and then I saw his floating station that he was in. And I'm like, wait, no, this is the wrong movie. This is supposed to be at the end of Super Mario World. King Koopa's supposed to be writing this. What's going on?
No. That's Eggman from Sonic. That's what that is.
That's all of them. That's just it. It's the wrong movie. Like, at no point did M. Bison, and when he did this, when he did his torpedo, whatever the heck it is, where he's flying through the air, he's supposed to be spinning and on fire, and it's just like there's so much that they gave attention to in this movie to be like, we need to do this like the video game, but they picked all the wrong things to do that with.
Right.
And didn't do them well, apparently.
It's like, why were they so focused on making Guile and Cammy so close to the video game, and yet Dalsum gets a bit part as a scientist, which has nothing to do with the video game.
Right.
It's just like, either you're going to do it or you're not, but you don't need to you can't
I
pick
kept
and
waiting for
choose.
Dawson to do something like I wanted to see how they were going to animate the punching.
Right?
I wonder if they ignored it because they knew they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, because literally 99% of what Dawson does is breaking physics in the
I
game.
think they were setting up for it when they had in that scene when he's with Blanca, they had that mutagen stuff fall out
Mhm.
on his arms. I think they were setting up
Oh.
for it, but then they realized, how are we going to do this? We've already wasted so much money on Jean-Claude Van Damme's nose. How are we going to do these long arms? And then Blanca. Was it just me,
Oh my gosh.
or was that the Lou Ferrigno Incredible Hulk with an orange wig on?
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what that was.
No, it was Dollar Tree Lou Ferrigno Incredible Hulk with an orange wig on. You know what I'm saying? You know how like you see like the off-brand toys and it was like Arachnid Man,
Sir,
and it's
no.
like this like ghetto looking Spider-Man.
Sir,
That's what that was.
That was the Wish.com Incredible Hulk.
Oh my gosh. So Blanca's one of my favorites in the Street Fighter 2 game. And just because he's cool looking. That made me mad actually. Again, I'm not that attached to the series, but they screwed up so much. Like literally like out of character. I went to watch the Street Fighter 2 anime movie just to get this out, just to have that experience. Just so I could have a proper Street Fighter experience.
Good palate cleanser.
Well, boys, should we go ahead and rate this?
Yeah.
For the listeners at home, that during that there was a brief silence there where we all just kind of stared at each other with a 1,000-yard stare, like we just survived something.
What is there to say?
Yeah, let's go ahead and hit the ratings.
All right, Branson, what's our rating system?
All right, here on the bottom shelf, we have a 4-step rating system on how we rate the movies. First up, we have John. You may have to edit this out. Dallas, I'm getting a low battery warning.
Oh, I'll be there in a second.
Okay,
I'll take over the rating for you here. Actually, Dallas, I will go ahead and do that because we're having some technical difficulties here. Here on the bottom shelf, we have a 4 rating system where we have a top shelf rating system, or top shelf rating rather, where this is a great movie. People should watch it. I believe everybody would enjoy it, and it has a place on everybody's collection. There's the middle shelf where it's understandable why some people wouldn't like it. I personally enjoyed it, and I think there's quite a few other people who would enjoy it. And depending on who it is, I would recommend this to somebody. There's the bottom shelf, which is no, this is a bad movie. Some people might enjoy it. I can see why some other people might enjoy it, but as for me and my house, it is not good. And then there's the dumpster fire, which is where it's just terrible and it loses its license to exist. And as far as we understand, no movie has ever made it into the dumpster fire. So, with that being said, Jonathan, what would you grade this movie as?
A low middle shelf, headed towards the bottom shelf.
A low middle shelf.
There were definitely highlights of the movie that were just fun to watch, like the final fight scene. And I got a lot of enjoyment and laughter out of the control panel being a actual game controller. But then I could see a lot of disaster in this movie with the over-characterization that just made it difficult to watch.
All right. Well, Dallas, where
Sir.
are you at with this movie?
I went back and forth on this a lot. Like Mario Brothers from last episode, this is not a good movie.
It's just how you say it, man. I don't know why that makes me laugh.
Went out to make t-shirts. This is not a good movie. But was I entertained? Yes. Am I entertained enough to keep watching it over and over and over again? Not regularly. We were talking off camera. I am legit fighting the impulse buy to go ahead and purchase the Street Fighter 2 collection for the Switch right now. Like I'm legit fighting that urge. It makes me want to play Street Fighter. I'm not a big fighting game person. So good Capcom, you're making money. And that's the thing. This movie made bank. It made back its money plus some in the world market. It was a hit overseas. I think it's better than the Chung Lee movie that came out. So that might be another season of the bottom shelf. I'm gonna go ahead and rate it. Yeah. I'm gonna go with Jonathan. It's gonna be a low middle shelf because I'll throw it in and laugh at it on the background. And I think it's better than Mario Brothers. I appreciate the work of Raul Julia and the way, like you said, he shined that turd. It's amazing what he was able to do with it. And if you go with it with the mindset, this is camp. This is not a serious film. This is purely camp. I can rock with it. So low middle.
All right, Branson, where you is with this one?
When I first started watching it, the further we got into it, I felt like this was going to be a solid middle shelf. Like I was like, yeah, this is campy. Yeah, this is 90s B action, but you know what? I like it. It's fun. I'm enjoying this. I could see myself seeing this on a channel and stopping to watch it just because it's there. But then we hit, I guess, the equivalent of Act 3, where we were leading up to the big fight, and things just fell apart. And it was telling to me that I fell asleep watching the movie. And when I woke up, I did not feel the urge to go back and watch the parts I missed. It was oh darn, I missed it. Okay. So it certainly had the potential to be a middle shelf for me. But when I balance all the pros and cons, I can't take a movie that I don't want to finish and put it on the middle shelf. Uh, there are too many good things about it for me to dumpster fire it. So I guess where y'all put it on a low middle shelf, I would put it on a high bottom shelf. Just because I can't middle shelf a movie I can't finish.
That's fair.
All right. So I've been doing some thinking about this, and what it comes down to is I don't feel like this movie respects the source material at all. I don't think it respects the source characters. Um I feel like casting, they did a terrible job casting. And if Jean-Claude Van Damme was wasting so much time putting so much cocaine up his nose, and time is a commodity that you can't have back, especially when you have someone who's terminally ill as a part of your cast,
Mm,
trying to make something as a legacy for his son, which
right.
which is what
Plural.
Raul Julia was doing. Um, that should have been something that was corrected early on in
Mm-hmm.
in production. Um, at any rate, out of respect for the performance that Raul Julia put in this movie, I wouldn't throw this in the dumpster fire either. And I don't want to own this movie. I don't. I don't want to watch it again. I'm gonna put it on the bottom shelf.
All right. Well, as you guys know in past episodes, if we have a split tie, which we do, and it is two low middles and two bottom shelves, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna toss this to the community. We're gonna make a post, and at the end of this episode, after our week connection, we will give you guys our final rating, thanks to the community. So stick around for that.
All right, so is it time to go to the weak connections?
We need something uplifting.
All right.
This is a weak connection.
All right. Welcome to the Week Connection. This is the portion of the show where we take a look at these terrible movies and we bring out something encouraging and uplifting to help you, grow a little bit, be inspired, and know that you're loved and you're cared for. And this is obviously in thanks to our good friends at Strangers and Aliens, Ben Avery, who does this on a regular basis. In fact, Ben did a Week Connection for this film. And I can't promise you this is going to happen, but we may reach out to him and see if he wants to slide his into this episode also. That being said, let's jump into it. I got a weak connection for us. Looking at it, and like we said before, this film was rife with the problem that they took stuff out and they added weird stuff to it over and over and over again. And it kind of reminded me of Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Nope, I'm the wrong section. Let me redo that. I was pulling out one of my my original Mario Brothers one. I apologize. Let me redo that. All right, welcome to Week Connections. This is the portion of the show where we bring out something encouraging for these films that are sometimes not very encouraging when you finish watching them. This is inspired by our friends over at Strangers and Aliens, Ben Avery, who does Week Connections with different films. Does a great job. Check him out, strangersaliens.com. Fantastic podcast that, John, you've been a member of their show many times before.
Several.
Yeah. And what was the one you just recently did with them?
Something actually no that I just recently did. I did the most recent thing I did with them hasn't come out yet is Dick Tracy.
Oh yeah. So I'll be looking for that.
That's okay, John. I forgive you.
It's garbage.
Branson, you're gonna eat here soon. Relax. So, anyways, so for me, my weak connection comes from a portion where Bison is talking to the team, and in the midst of the movie, Chun-Li is about to put the winning blow, and Bison gets away, and they all get captured. And Bison said something interesting. He goes, "If you had worked together instead of against each other, you would have been successful." And it reminds me of Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone. When he falls and has no other to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. And this brings up the whole reason for friendship, for community. There's a mindset that, well, we don't need somebody. We're very independent here in the United States, but we do. We need friends. We need a community. We need brothers and in the faith and sisters in the faith. We need people, a community that can lift us up, because honestly, sometimes life sucks. Like I've had bad days, guys. Even recently, I've had some times where I'm just done with stuff, and I'm thankful to have a community where I have brothers. Some of the guys on this podcast right here that have encouraged me, and not even knowing that they were encouraging me at times, and I'm there for them at the same time. We need that. I want to encourage you guys listening. You may be going through some hard times, but the biggest work of the enemy is to make you go, well, I'll just suck it up, not worry about it. I don't want to be a bother. I hate that phrase because so many people say, "Oh, I don't want to bother anybody." No, bother me. If you're struggling, if you're going through something, please reach out, because there's no reason for you to suffer alone. That's how the enemy wins. So my encouragement for you guys is we can win against an enemy of the world. We can win against the depression and fear and anxiety if you would only work with other people. If you'd be willing to sometimes let go of the fear, let go of the pride, and reach out to somebody and let them help you. So that's my weak connection.
Cool.
Anybody else?
There's a speech.
I'm working on it.
There's a speech from Jean-Claude Van Damme right before they get on the legendary stealth boat, where he keeps going, but we can go home. Evil's gonna win, but we can go home. I get that impression from a lot of Christians that we have hit this wall of, but we can go home. We've gone to church on Sunday. We've gone to prayer service Sunday night. We've gone to Bible study Wednesday. We can go home and let it go. And we can't. At that point, we've just given up on everything. And it brought me to Galatians 6,
Word.
verse 9. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due seasons we shall reap if we do not lose heart. And just hit me hard that, hey, here we are. He's talking about how they don't need to be given up on fighting against bison, stopping tyranny. And yet, as Christians, we are giving up and letting sin win. We need to listen to him more in both our personal and our worldly lives.
Word.
Amen. All right.
You got one, Branson?
I did not at first, but after hearing some of the trivia, I do now, actually.
Go for it, my dude.
All right. So, playing off of the fact that, and I think, John, you're the one that mentioned that was it Raul Julia? Is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
The guy that played Bison.
Yeah.
He was sick with cancer, and the only reason he took this role is because his son, who was a big Street Fighter fan, asked him to, and he did it kind of for his kids. And his son came back and said, "Look, say what you will about the movie. I love it. I think it was one of my dad's best performances. I love that movie." And I think his son's view of that movie may have less to do with the quality of the movie than just, I know my dad did this just for me. You
Mm,
know, I know, like, if I were that kid, I would be like I would have a special edition of that movie on a shrine somewhere because
yeah.
my dad was on his deathbed, but got up and poured his best into it to just for me. And the fact that uh, he did pour so much effort into it, they were talking about how he researched. I mean, this is a movie based on a video game.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to put that much research into it, but he did. He looked at other dictators. He took mannerisms. He studied characters. I mean, he did the best that he could do to create the best character he could. And we all commented on how he was the shining part of that movie. He was the best part of that movie. And it reminds me of the story of Joseph especially in Genesis chapter 39. Joseph is sold into slavery by his brothers. He's in a foreign land as a slave, but he has this attitude of, you know what, I'm just going to do the best that I can. God puts his hand on Joseph, blesses him, and it's like Joseph can do no wrong. Everything he touches multiplies. And he just keeps at it and keeps at it and keeps at it and pours his best into the situation that he's got to the point that Potiphar makes Joseph second in command of his entire household. And then we have the situation with Potiphar's wife. So he gets kicked back into prison. And then he does the same thing again. He helps out the prisoners. He interprets their dreams. He does the best that he can do. And he works his way back up to where he becomes second only to Pharaoh over all of Egypt. So the takeaway there is no matter what situation you find yourself in, if God has put you there, then it's your task to do whatever you can do in that situation, absolutely to your best ability, as unto the Lord, for the glory of God.
Yeah.
And that was definitely Ju- Julia. I'm gonna mess up his name again. Is it Julia?
Raul Julia.
Raul Julia. That was Raul Julia's attitude. He's like, he didn't care. He didn't care that he was sick. He didn't care that this was a movie based on a video game. He cared about, this is probably the last movie I'm going to do. It is a
Mm,
movie that my son asked me specifically to do. So, regardless of what else is going on, regardless of the fact that my co star is a crackhead, regardless of what else is going on, I'm going to pour everything I've got into this.
Cokehead, sir.
Cokehead, sorry. Yeah.
get your drugs right, Branson.
But and I find that very inspiring, that, no matter what situation I'm in, I'm gonna put the best that I've got into it. And I think
Yeah.
as followers, that's what we're called to be. God's not always gonna put us on a mountaintop. He's not always gonna put us in comfortable situations. As a matter of fact, following Jesus usually means we're gonna be in very uncomfortable situations, often.
Word.
But regardless of what circumstance we're in, we're expected to do everything to the best of our ability. And Julia epitomized that in the way he treated the Bison character. So that's my weak connection.
All right. And I have one too, also
Let's
based
go.
off of the production, more of the production and not the movie itself. Um, in that there was a lot of stuff that was tolerated in the making of this movie that ended up affecting the movie as a whole. Um, and if it would have just been dealt with before it was an issue, I do believe that this could have been a better movie. Um, and it really made me think of Galatians 5 verses 7 through 9. Paul's writing to the Galatians and he says, you were running well. Who hindered you from obeying the truth? This persuasion is not from him who calls you. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. And during this time period, the Galatians were tolerating a doctrine and some teachings that weren't biblical and didn't come from Paul or any specific revelation from God. And it was getting them off track to produce something that was not of God. In the same way that there were just things that I'm sure were probably minor at first that were tolerated in the production of this movie that got them off track and ended up producing something that is a disfigured representation of what this movie should have been. And as Christians, we have a tendency to make little tolerances, and it's just a little bit of leaven here and a little bit of leaven there. But what we don't realize is that little bit of leaven is going to permeate everything at some point.
That's good.
And eventually it's going to affect everything, like the garbage did in this movie. It ended up affecting everything. And as a Christian, we're called to throw the leaven out, you know, uh, throw the leaven out and start over, basically. So I would encourage anybody out there who is dealing with something and they've been telling themselves, it's not that bad, or it's not such a big deal. It's just such a small thing. And that type of thinking ends up, it'll eventually permeate itself throughout your entire life. And sin isn't something to wink at,
Yeah.
because eventually it will permeate everything in subtle ways that you don't even think of, because if it doesn't affect you directly, it'll indirectly change the way that you perceive sin, to where you're like, hey, it's really not that big of a deal. We're under grace, and so, God really doesn't care if we serve such a loving God. And yet, I'm listening to another podcast called The Midweek Move, where they're talking about the churches in Revelation, where there were certain sects that were like, hey, let's experience the true grace of God by really sinning more. you know um, I believe that's how you guys were going into it, wasn't it, Dallas? No, it wasn't even the midweek move. It's your church that's doing that.
Yeah, that was just the sermon.
Whoops.
I was
My
like,
bad.
I'm sitting there going, I'm like, we're in James right now in midweek move.
My bad. So no, it's the Healing Place Church in Shreveport, Louisiana. My church away from church. But and it's like that. Eventually, you end up with some wackadoo things that you would have never thought that you would have been to, just because you make small compromises here and there that end up permeating everything.
Right.
So I would challenge you to throw out the leaven and create a new lump.
Fair.
Cool.
Dig it.
I did not expect to go that deep out of Street Fighter, but here we are.
I know, right? It's pretty cool what we can do with some of this stuff here.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for hanging out with us. Again, stick around to the very end. We'll have our final rating of this particular movie for you guys coming up. John, I know you said that there's no way to get a hold of you and nothing you want to advertise. So we do want to say thank you so much for being on with us. Not John, Jonathan. Thank you for being part of the show this month, and for suffering through two fascinating films. Question for you: are you going to go play video games after this?
Actually, I've got about 9 pounds of chicken to cook up and about 4 pounds of chicken wings to go cook now.
I'm on my way, brother, to have dinner.
We're heading that way.
John,
Yes,
how
sir.
can people get hold of you?
Well, if you're interested in anything that I do, please check out the link tree in the show notes. That has links to all my projects I'm involved with. Specifically, please go check out Playing Games with Strangers. That is my actual play D&D podcast, where a bunch of us voice actors get together and act like idiots for your amusement. And also go check out the upcoming episode of Strangers and Aliens that will probably be out by the time that you hear this, where we talk about that terrible movie Dick Tracy that needs to go in a dumpster fire.
Your mouth.
Dumpster fire.
Your
Dumpster
I will
fire.
drive up to Washington and slap you across the face.
I dare
Next year on the bottom shelf.
Street Fighter Bottom Shelf Edition.
Street Fighter, the movie, the podcast.
I respect this move a lot. That's so good. Branson, how can people get hold of you, bud?
I'm mostly in two main spots. I have a section of ComTalk called Bees Views and Reviews, where I review faith-based, family-friendly comics. If you have a faith-based, family-friendly comic you want me to review, you can send the recommendation to me at branson.boykin@gmail.com. Also, I have an audio drama called Gospel by Gaslight. It's a steampunk audio drama. You can find that on all your favorite podcast catchers. Just type in Gospel by Gaslight in the search window. You can listen there.
Word. Awesome. Hey, I'm Dallas. You can find me at geekdevotions.com where you can find information about this podcast, The Bottom Shelf, also our other podcasts, We Read Allegedly, the Gundam Watch, Con Talk, and then our weekly episodes on YouTube called Geek Devotions, where we take geek culture and use it to let people know loved. That being said, follow this podcast on Facebook and on Instagram. Look for The Bottom Shelf Podcast. Come up mostly easily, whatnot. And also, as John keeps reminding us, make sure you like and share and leave a review of this podcast. Coming down the road, if you leave a review on Apple Podcasts or if you leave a review on Podchaser, we might read it on air. Like, if it's a good review, we won't read terrible reviews. So, all right.
Actually,
So, like,
if you leave a terrible review, I might read it and then review your review.
wow.
Make it entertaining.
That being said, hey, thanks for hanging out with us. And again, stick around because you're about to hear our final rating of Street Fighter.
Attention crew of the Bottom Shelf. Final rating for Street Fighter is in. We at the Bottom Shelf have officially declared 1994's Street Fighter a middle shelf film. Oh dear. Seeing how the crew and community has rated this film, I now worry how they will view next month's. John, you may need to prepare yourself for it.